We got a huge Week 2 matchup between the Los Angeles Rams and the Tennessee Titans, and the game will be won in the trenches. We break it down on today's Crossover Thursday.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Titans fans, Rams fans, once again, it is Crossover Thursday, going behind enemy lines to get you guys ready for this big-time Week 2 matchup. We have the 1-0 Rams, the 0-1 Titans, and there's going to be a lot on the line here. We're going to talk about the biggest storylines for each team. We're going to talk about the biggest matchups to watch in this game, and we're going to talk about ultimately what we think decides this matchup. Before we get into all of it, do want to thank you for tuning in to Locked On Titans and Locked On Rams and for being an everydayer here with us at these respective podcasts. It is Crossover Thursday, and Crossover Thursday is presented by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. I am the host of Locked On Titans, Tyler Rowland, here with one of the excellent co-hosts from Locked On Rams, Travis Rogers. Travis, a big win in Week 1 for the Rams. How are you feeling about things?
So far, so good. I think that they got off to a pretty good start. The Rams never play anybody in the preseason. I mean, they don't play anybody in the preseason. So that was our first look at the 2025 Rams against the Houston Texans last week. They weren't great, but they were good enough. They did some things that I thought were really interesting, especially up front on the defensive line. But it's a good start. I think Houston's a pretty good team, and that they took care of business against a good Texans team, I think is a good indicator for the Rams.
Absolutely. And I mean, the Texans at minimum are going to have a very good defense. So The Rams being able to perform in any way against that level of defense is a good sign. But again, we are going to start with kind of the biggest storylines heading into Week 2. The Titans are the home team. So I'll show a little Southern hospitality here, Travis, and let you go first. What's the number one thing that Rams fans or that you're looking for, the biggest thing that everyone's focused on heading into this matchup in Nashville?
Yeah, Tyler, I think you mentioned it right off the top, and I think that's the Rams' ability to protect Matthew Stafford in the middle of the offensive line. They lost both of their guards against the Texans, both of their starting guards. Both Steve Avila and Kevin Dotson had to leave the game at various points. Bo Limmer filled in at both the left guard to start and then finished the game at right guard. Avila was able to come back in the game ultimately and finish it, but Jeffrey Simmons is a real problem. He's a terrific problem. And Matthew Stafford is a 37-year-old guy in his 17th year in the NFL. And, quarterbacks that can move their feet a little bit might be able to get away with some pressure that's coming up the middle. But Matthew Stafford isn't. That's not what he does. The pressure off to the sides, he can deal with pretty well. He can step up. He can move the pocket. The pressure right in his face, I think, can be a challenge. The Rams caught a little bit of a break. They signed Coleman Shelton in the offseason to come back and be their center again after having him be gone for a year. So he's able to kind of do some line checks and things like that. But I think that's the big thing right there. If they give Matthew Stafford just a little bit of time to make some reads and make some decisions, he's going to carve you up. And that's the first thing I'm looking at.
And ultimately, that's probably a coaching thing, right? Sean McVay is going to have to do a little more to ensure that he helps out. I would imagine your confidence level is pretty high that McVay can scheme up something, right?
It's funny, Tyler. We talk about this on Locked On Rams a lot, and this is Sean McVay's, believe it or not, this is his 9th season in LA, and we talked about when he first got here. Okay, this is the Todd Gurley window. Okay, turned out it wasn't the Todd Gurley window. Okay, it's the Jared Goff window. No, not so much. Hey, it's the Aaron Donald window. Maybe not. Hey, it's the Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp window. It's the Sean McVay window. The window is Sean McVay because he's the only piece that has been here through all of this.
Yep.
And he is as good as anybody at this in the entire league. There are other really good guys. I'm not saying that he's foreign, but if you have your guy, I'll take my guy. I'm not trading him for anybody. And yes, I agree with you. I think when it comes to finding a way to put his players in a position to succeed, there's nobody as good at it as Sean McVay.
And quite frankly, Travis, I'd take your guy in this one too. I think that's, for me, the big storyline for the Titans here is the coaching. Brian Callahan is in the national spotlight. I know you don't cover the Titans on a daily basis. You're probably not, diving into the little coaching decisions Brian Callahan's making, but whether it be game management decisions of whether to challenge a guy who had his elbow in on the sideline and then saying that he didn't know the rule afterwards, whether it be the uber aggressive approach that he took up 3 near halftime in the shadow of his own goalpost and almost getting his quarterback sacked for a safety, and then ultimately giving the Broncos great field position to get a cheap touchdown on the board and take the lead before half. Brian Callahan is in the crosshairs, and I find it interesting that even on a national scale right now, a lot of national folks are looking at Brian Callahan like, why was he doing that? What's going on? And with Sean McVay, I agree with you. I would take Sean McVay right now over just about any coach. I mean, Andy Reid, Andy Reid's a great coach. He deserves his. But Sean McVay, to me, is the perfect combination of the two things you need in a head coach. You need someone who can motivate and inspire and lead a locker room, but you also do need someone who's a bit of a scheme wizard. You can't just be all nerd like Mike McDaniel, and you can't be all macho man like Mike Vrabel. You got to kind of be a combination of both, and Sean McVay is the perfect example of that to me. So I am a bit worried that the coaching mismatch here is what I would call it, the advantage that the Rams have, even though the Titans have some areas where I'm actually a little more confident that the Titans can compete in this game than I was before the season because of the Rams injuries and some things like that. But the disadvantage the Titans have from Brian Callahan being their coach to Sean McVay kind of backs me off some of that confidence.
Yeah, here's what I can tell you, Tyler. Sure, I know Sean McVay knows the rules. I know that's something that he's got a pretty good grasp on. I think you kind of put your finger in the center of the bullseye right there. He is not only a guy that knows how to scheme and knows how to get guys open and protect guys that need to be protected and give guys the support that they need to support, but he is a master at building culture. Like the Rams culture since he has gotten here is, and it's hard to say. I know I mentioned it again. I mentioned it a lot to my everydayers that this is his 9th year here. It feels like he is still a breath of fresh air. It feels like he has still been able to kind of change us around. And, we went from Jeff Fisher when the Rams came from St. Louis back to Los Angeles 10 years ago. Jeff Fisher was the opposite of a breath of fresh air. It was about as stale as it could possibly be. And here comes this guy that is young and dynamic and handsome and energetic and all of these things. And fast forward 9 years later, and he's still all of those things. And he's driving this team forward. He is relentlessly positive. He is a demanding head coach. If you are not up to the job, he will find somebody that is. He is not a pushover in any possible way. And Rams fans are very lucky to have him on the sidelines.
And one thing to consider is not just what the coach does, but putting their staff in place. And there's some conversation that Brian Callahan did know the rules, and he was trying to basically be a human shield to protect his guy upstairs who, tells him whether to challenge things. And my response would that to be, well, if the guy upstairs who's responsible for giving you information and being your spotter doesn't know the NFL rules, then maybe you didn't hire the right guy. Are you going to replace him since he didn't know that? Brian Callahan had a terrible special teams coach all of last season that really hurt the Titans and didn't make the move until after the year to bring in Bones Fossil. So it goes more than just game management, scheme, leadership. There's the how do you manage your staff as well. So I know Titans fans out there are like, man, I wish we had a Sean McVay, and I understand. But let me say this, Titans fans. The players have to play the game, and I think there is one player in this game who can hit on a disadvantage the Rams might have that could lean things towards the Titans. But the problem is, on the other side, Rams got some pretty good guys in that area as well. Crossover Thursday continues. Do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride. They have more IIHS Top Safety Pick awards than anyone else as of August 2025. Whether it be footwork or breath work, athletes sweat all the details, and Mazda brings that same intention to how they craft every model. You can feel The Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to the available Napa leather upholstery. Say that 5 times fast, folks. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but. From the smooth handling to intuitive controls. I drive a Mazda. I love my Mazda, and I know you will too. Like our players, Mazda sweats every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. It's Mazda. Move and be moved. Today's episode is also brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. This grape, ginger, and lime flavored shot brings the iconic taste of a golf course favorite to a non-alcoholic boost. Perfect for sinking birdies or making great moments with great friends. It's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Whether you're out on the course or you just need a little extra push to power through your day, 5 Hour Energy Transfusion delivers the clubhouse flavor you love without ever leaving the green. I literally just last week got a 5 Hour Transfusion at the clubhouse, went out, hit a 40-foot birdie putt, chipped in for birdie on a par 3. It was a great day, and honestly, I got to give it up to 5 Hour Energy. Golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors. The grape, ginger, lime flavor of 5 Hour Energy Transfusion gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without ever leading the course. Now, you can amp up the fun even more. Just buy, snap, and enter for a chance to win a dream golf trip for 2 to any golf tournament in the USA. Tee up that trip. Visit 5HEWin.com for full rules and entry. No purchase necessary. Excludes the Masters tournament. Ends October 31st, 2025. All right, Travis, let's continue today's crossover Thursday. We talked about the big storylines here in the game. Travis, I'll let you lead off there. I'm going to steal back the reins. That hospitality only lasted one segment there, but I still remember 2021 and 1999 and all these different games that these two teams have had against each other. And going to 2021, one of the things that really stood out to me from that game, it was one of the best seasons in Titans history, one of the best games in Titans history, in my opinion. Yeah, our history hasn't been as good as the Rams, but it was a fantastic game. The thing that stood out there was Jeffrey Simmons had 3 sacks in that game. And you mentioned that there are some injuries on the interior trio of the Rams. So when I look at a matchup that I think could absolutely decide this one, I look at Jeffrey Simmons, who led the Titans with 7 pressures last week. He was virtually unblockable against the Denver Broncos, and the Broncos have a really good offensive line with some good players like Quinn Miners and Garrett Bowles and Ben Powers on the, Powers and Miners are on the interior, and Simmons still was basically unblockable. And 2 turnovers out of the 4 that the Titans forced, out of the 3 they forced on defense, 2 of them were Jeffrey Simmons gets a strip sack, and then Jeffrey Simmons hits Bo Nix while he's throwing, and it turns into an interception. So that's against a good offensive line. Any confidence I feel that the Titans might be able to pull an upset in this game just basically generates from the fact that I think Jeffrey Simmons might be able to absolutely dominate up front against that interior trio if there are injuries and there are backups in. And I think that is a matchup where, whether it's the Rams' view, whether it's the Titans' view, that might be the pivotal thing that decides the game if the Rams allow the Titans to pull off an upset.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tyler. I think that is by far the most interesting matchup for me to watch as well, because there's the whole other subtext of the entire offseason that took place with Matthew Stafford, which is, how healthy is he? How gimpy is back? How is he going to be able to move? Now, he got sacked a couple of times against the Texans, but they weren't big hits. They weren't, something that made you go, oh my goodness, is he going to be able to get back up? But from everybody that I've talked to around the Rams, they're not nearly worried about him getting hit as much as they are him having to make quick movements, and him having to try to escape something might be a more dangerous situation for him than, getting squared up and getting tackled. So I really do think that that's the part to keep your eye on. Like we talked about a minute ago, I think Sean McVay will find a way to deal with it. I know that he's an incredibly good adjuster. As the game goes on, he kind of hunts and pecks at the beginning of the game to see where the opportunities are to set you up for later. But if you can't protect your quarterback, that's kind of a wrap. I mean, there is no solution for a quarterback that doesn't have time. They don't have a running back. Kyron Williams is pretty good fantasy running back, but when it comes to, game to game, he's going to get you somewhere between 60 and 85 yards. He'll probably get into the end zone, and he's going to get them at about 3 yards a clip. That's just how he goes about it. So I don't know if they can offset that rush with what they're going to do in the running game. But to come full circle, I have faith in McVay finding it out. But I agree with you that is by far the biggest thing for me. The Rams will get pressure on defense. Those front four guys that they have. It might not be Philadelphia. It might not be some of these other really high level defensive lines, but we're getting there. These are guys that Jared Verse is in his second season. You look at the stat sheet, it might not be something that makes you go, oh my goodness, but he was everywhere on that field against the Texans. Byron Young might have had his best game as a Ram a week ago. He had a sack along the way. And then you got Kobe Turner, who led the team in sacks last year. Braden Fisk made a unbelievable recovery on that peanut punch by Nate Landman.
Yeah, that was a great punch, man.
It was a great punch. And when you think of Sean McVay, you think of this dynamic offense. You think of 30 points a game. You think of all of the intricacies of what he's bringing offensively. Fact of the matter is, other than the Philadelphia game in the divisional round of the playoffs last year, nobody scored double digits against the Rams since week 14 a year ago. They put up 2 6s and 3 9s. I mean, they are playing lights out defense. So, the sizzle is certainly on the offense, but the steak is up front on that Rams defensive line.
No, 100%. And that's something that I've been focused on. Peek behind the curtain as Travis was coming in for us to get started. I was finishing up a little bit of tape work on the Titans offensive line and the sacks that they allowed last week. And you segued us perfectly into the next matchup that I think can decide it. You're 100% right. That Rams defense does not get the credit that they deserve because McVay and the offense and all of that going on. That's obviously something that people are going to gravitate to with fantasy and all these different things. But that defense has been nails. And that's why I've been saying that the Rams are a top 5, top 6 team in the NFL. I love the Rams this year. I think they're even overrated, even if you call them a top 12 team. I just think they really finally have some great pieces on defense. And you look at the Titans, the offensive line was supposed to be improved this year. Travis, they go out and they pay Dan Moore $22 million per year to be the new franchise left tackle. You shift J.C. Latham from left tackle to right tackle, hoping that in his second year he's more comfortable. He can turn into a better player over there. Peter Skoronski at left guard is awesome. I think he's going to be an all-pro level player. 88 pass blocking grade in the game, 0 pressure, 0 sacks at left guard. That's not the place to attack if you're attacking the Titans. But Lloyd Cushenberry will be in his second game back from an ACL tear, an Achilles tear. But at the end of the day, he was the highest paid center when the Titans gave him a contract a little over a year ago, and they bring in Kevin Zeitler from the Lions, who is an experienced guy who should be able to do it. With that much invested in the offensive line, the hope was that the Titans offensive line would be massively improved. Now, everyone's saying, well, the Denver Broncos led the NFL in sacks last year. That's a great defense, a great pass rush. Well, like you were saying, I think the Rams are right up there too with Philadelphia, with Denver, with some of these other defensive lines. I think the Rams are a top 5 defensive line in pass rush, and they're going to prove it this year. So the matchups are all about the trenches for me. If the Titans get whooped up front again like they did against Denver, and you mentioned the numbers, the scoring. The Titans aren't a great offense even against an average defense. They're not going to put up a ton of points. So against a really good defensive front, that is a matchup where I talk about Jeffrey Simmons wrecking the game. Well, the Rams have about 4 guys who could wreck the game if they wanted to on the D-line.
Yeah, it's funny. Jared Verse got a ton of attention last year, and rightfully so. He had a terrific year, defensive player of the year, rookie defensive player of the year last year. He was 4th on this team in sacks. He was 4th. Okay, so I mean, that it gives you an idea of who else is out there. You have Fisk, you have Turner, you have Byron Young doing their thing. And I think that the soft spot of this Rams defense is certainly in the back end. But
yeah, I was going to ask about that. Where do you see the weakness in that defense?
Yeah, it's back there. It's your corners. Akilla Witherspoon is a guy that has been here for a while, and everybody would like to have somebody that might be a little bit of a bigger name, a little bit, grayed out a little bit better. But he holds his own. He's one of those guys that, at the end of the game, you're like, all right, he did what you needed him to do. It might not be the prettiest thing in the world. I think in this particular game, going up against a rookie quarterback who's playing in just his second game with this pass rush that we've been talking about, I don't know if the Titans will be able to expose the weaknesses that they have. I mean, you look at what the Texans did last week, that they did a really good job against Nico Collins. CJ Stroud, obviously, I think is a pretty good quarterback in this league. And they shut him down pretty effectively. They didn't get inside the 17-yard line the entire game. So I think that front is going to make life difficult on just about everybody they play this year. And I think they're going to make it real difficult on a guy playing in his second game in the NFL.
You know, on behalf of Titans fans, I do want to say, thanks, Rams, for beating the Texans, because whether the Titans are good or not, surely sick of hearing about the Texans, no doubt about that. Sure. But that is, on the other side, something I'm looking at, too, because with Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams, that's one of the best duos in the entire NFL. Now, in theory, the Titans' cornerback room is one of the strongest things on the team. L'Jarius Sneed had limited snaps last week coming back from an injury, but I thought he played pretty well in those 21 snaps that he played. Jarvis Brownlee Jr. has penalty problems as a second-year cornerback, but he's a good, feisty, physical corner, and Roger McCreary in the slot is one of the best slot corners in the NFL. He had an interception last week as well. So if there is an area where the Titans might be able to cancel out a great advantage for the Rams, it could be if the cornerbacks play well. But on the other side, you're right. Taking a look at the Rams cornerbacks and kind of a group that doesn't flash to you but plays well as a unit, that'll be an interesting matchup to watch.
Yeah, I think so too. And I'll give a little credit to Chris Shula. The Rams, I still get my Shulas confused occasionally. Yep. Yeah, Chris Shula, the Rams defensive coordinator. Coming into last season, as a rookie DC, I was skeptical. I'm like, all right, let's see. They had Raheem Morris there for a long time, been around this league forever, had been a head coach, had been a coordinator, and really had a pretty good grip on what that defense was doing. And Chris Shula came in and was terrific. He was fantastic. And I think he did a really good job last week. And, the Rams have always kind of, they've put all of their money on one side of the ball and kind of made do. They're very young still on the defensive side of the ball. They're going to have to pay some of these guys sooner than later. But I think that I don't know if the word's out yet. I think you've got a pretty good grip on it. This may be a team that is led by its defense more than its offense, even with guys like Devontae Adams and Matthew Stafford and Puka Nacua, names that we all know. The Rams might be a defensive first football team for the first time under Sean McVay.
Yeah, it would be very interesting to see. But with that being said, those are the matchups we're watching now. A lot of wide receiver versus secondary, obviously a lot of trenches. But what's going to decide this matchup and who wins? We're going to talk about that to cap off this crossover Thursday. Do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL season is here, folks, and FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Once again, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I personally love using FanDuel. It fits whatever I want to do. If I want to hit player props and bet the over on Cam Ward passing yards, if I want to build a same game parlay with a couple sacks for Jared Verse and a rushing touchdown for Kyron Williams, I can do that. Or even if I miss kickoff and want to jump in and do some live betting, you can do that on FanDuel as well. It makes every game even more exciting, whether you're watching your favorite team or you're just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, it's easy, it's the best way to add a little bit more energy to your Sunday. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, Travis, let's cap off today's crossover Thursday edition of the Locked On Titans and Locked On Rams podcast. Once again, thank you for making Locked On Titans and Locked On Rams your first listen each and every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL. Little self-promotion. I host Locked On NFL in the morning show, keeping you updated on all of your general NFL topics. Make sure that you get all of your favorite team news with these two shows, and then get your NFL news with Locked On NFL. But talking about the things that might decide this matchup, I will say the number one thing will be the turnover battle. The Titans won the turnover battle in a big way last week. They won it 4-2. I think it's really 4-1 because Cam Ward had a strip sack fumble while he was trying to make something happen on the very last play of offense for the Titans. It wasn't a turnover that actually impacted the game at all. If he just would have got sacked, it would not change anything whatsoever. But the Titans defense forced a lot of turnovers in training camp, in the joint practices. And if they can keep that momentum going, they'll at least give their team a chance because the Rams are a better football team on paper than the Titans. I'm not breaking any news there. But again, if Jeffrey Simmons can get pressure and dominate up front, maybe makes Matthew Stafford have some happy feet a little bit, they might be able to do something. Now, look, when I say these numbers, it's not like Matthew Stafford was bad, but there was a big drop-off for Matthew Stafford when he was under pressure compared to when he was kept clean against the Texans. When he was clean against the Texans, 17 for 19, 172 yards and a touchdown. When he was under pressure, he was only 4 for 10 with 73 yards. Now, again, he had 2 big-time throws while he was under pressure and 3 when he was kept clean. It's not like Stafford's going to crumble completely, but at his age, with some of the health concerns, if he gets hit early and often, he might get rid of the ball a little quicker when things aren't as open. He might be trying to move around, get happy feet, move around too early, run into somebody else and cause a fumble. I think the Titans need to continue to force turnovers like they did last week if they want any chance, and then not have their coach absolutely shoot them in the foot. So what decides the matchup for me is the Titans pass rush being able to get some sort of pressure on Matthew Stafford, which might be able to result in some turnovers.
Yeah, I know, Tyler, it's just week 2 of the NFL season, but I'm going to take the over on the times that I say that the deciding factor in these games is going to be who turns the ball over less.
Right.
Because that's how this is the NFL. If you don't turn it over, you usually win. It's not everybody's good.
Usually.
Yeah, usually everybody's good. These games are almost always a one possession game. It's the ultimate a play here, a play there league. So you just look at what the Rams did last week. They had 2 takeaways. They had 1 giveaway. They won, and they picked up a big one at the end with that punch that we talked about. Kobe Durant had a really nice interception along the way. I thought that Matthew Stafford did a really good job, even in those plays under pressure, like you mentioned. The ball was never really at risk. He did a really good job with ball security and not making bad decisions. If they win the turnover battle, I think for Tennessee to have a chance to grab this game, the Rams are going to have to be a little sloppy with the ball. And Kobe Parkinson had that turnover, and that really was the only reason that game got a little close at the end. Had the Rams been able to kick that field goal, they scored a touchdown on that final drive there, or the Parkinson drive. The game is over. Instead, it gave the Texans a little bit of life. The Rams made a big play defensively along the way, but write it down. 2 out of 2 for me when asking about the differences. It's whoever turns the ball over less, I think, has a big advantage, and I'll go with it again this week.
And I say it all the time. That's the great equalizer, whether you're the lowly middle school team going against the juggernaut, or, you're in the high school playoffs with the big city and the small city, or whether you're in the NFL with a playoff team like the Rams and kind of a bottom feeder like the Titans. The turnovers have a chance to keep the game equal for both teams. But Travis, I don't mean to put you on the spot. I might know where you're leaning on this one. Do you think that your Rams come into Nashville and find a way to get this win?
I do. I think that the Rams, we've been breaking down the schedule kind of in quarters. As difficult as it is to divide 17 by 4, we're taking it in quarters. The Rams needed to beat Houston. They need to beat the Titans. They need to beat Indianapolis in week 4. They've got the Eagles coming up a week from Sunday in Philadelphia. That's the one in the first quarter that you say, okay, to go into Philly and beat the defending champs is a tall order. So, we'll see what it looks like. But I think that the Rams have done interesting enough. I'll back up a little bit here, Tyler. The last 2 seasons, the Rams have gotten off to incredibly slow starts. Last year they were 1-4. 2 years before that, they were 3-6. They really dug themselves some deep holes. Now they were able to dig out of it both times and end up in the playoffs. They've been a really good second half team, but the year they won the Super Bowl a few years ago, they got off to an 8-0 start. When they can put a little money in the bank, when they can find a way to rest their guys when it's necessary, and maybe nurse some injuries along the way, what they've been really good at in Sean McVay is winning the games you're supposed to win. This is a game they're supposed to win. I expect them to.
100%. And I'll be honest with you. When I look at this game, I felt a weird the Titans just play the Rams good when they play. I don't know how to explain it, you know what I mean? Even when I don't expect it. And the Titans certainly aren't as good of a football team. I got some more tape to watch of the Rams. I'm going to watch the Rams second half against the Texans, which I haven't got to yet. But I can't quite say I think the Titans are going to win, but I think this game is going to be closer than what Rams fans want. And I think this game is going to be closer than maybe what some Titans fans who are really angry about last week are expecting. So I think it's a close one, but at this time, and I reserve the right to change my mind in tomorrow's show after I watch the rest of the film and everything, but I think this game will be close, and I think Titans fans will be more proud with this effort than they were last week, but I do think the Rams find a way to pull this thing off. I think it'll be a one-score game, like you said, though, and the Rams will just be the team that makes the winning play at the end. But that's Crossover Thursday, folks. Locked on Titans, Locked on Rams. Thank you for making us your first listen. Again, we're going to have preview shows for the full game on Friday's episode. We're going to have reaction shows after these games finish on Sunday. But thanks for tuning in. That's going to do it again for Crossover Thursday. It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.